Adrian Veidt, or Ozymandias, perhaps the most mysterious of the Watchmen ensemble and the ultimate instigator of events in Alan Moore's classic story, but also not a character without a backstory or a history, which is mostly detailed by the man himself in the final 2 issues of Watchmen. All this in mind, what story did writer Len Wein pursue for this character when writing his 6-issue tie-in, and was it any good? Well, it's worth noting that Wein was one of the only Before Watchmen writers to work on a single tie-in book, with Cook, Straczynski, and Azzarello all pulling double duty, though Wein also wrote the Dollar Bill one-shot and the Crimson Corsair backup story. But the reduced workload surely provides reason to hope. And how did he go? Well, for a story so concerned with extrapolating from minor details as this one, Ozymandias makes some questionable choices. Spanning the longest period of time of any of the tie-ins, its meandering plot, progressed usually by accident or coincidence, is not the Ozymandias story that anyone asked for. The plot begins with Adrian's childhood, shows his troubled schooling and the death of his parents, these events amounting to the sum total of new additions to his backstory. From there, the book offers a less detailed account of the story Adrian tells in issue 11 of Watchmen, as he wanders the earth walking in the footsteps of his idol Alexander the Great. Though curiously, the book forgets to mention the revelation that Alexander was himself inspired by Ozymandias. An incredible omission to be sure, but so far as I can see, the closest the book comes to making this essential connection is a vague reference to the ancient knowledge of the pharaohs. No mention of Ozymandias, the original, is made whatsoever in this book. The book's story only becomes more perplexing from there, with Adrian returning to America apparently determined to raise a fortune on the stock market, though exactly why is not established beyond a general desire for power. The book altogether fails to make the case that Adrian wants to save the world, and offers no reason as to why he decides to. Adrian's great love affair, which apparently inspired him to adopt his superhero identity, is dealt with in 5 pages, from her first appearance to her quite random death. Adrian's disguise, which he dons to track down the drug dealers who killed her, was ordered for a Halloween party. Yep. Wein's plot only becomes more lackluster from there, somehow managing to take all the impact and mystique out of events by offering terribly mundane answers unbefitting of the character's prestigious nature. For another example, this book addresses the exact method by which Adrian devised his masterstroke, that method being to watch a box set of the television show The Outer Limits, which the book says he rewatched possibly for days. Adrian then decides to enact the same plan he saw on the show. No, seriously, that happens. Plot points like this diminish the character overall, and matters are not helped by the fact that Ozymandias often ends issues with moments of inspiration for Adrian. But these moments are all created by external events, such as the failure of the Crime Busters inaugural or Dr. Manhattan's request for assistance. As such, Ozymandias the character seems to be buoyed mostly by the whims of others rather than his own sense of virtue or the significance of his crusade. This is a wholly disappointing and shallow view that hardly accords with the seriousness and diligence of the character I remember from Watchmen, a man willing to kill millions of people to guarantee world peace, and one who planned to save the world long before any of the events depicted here. This book also has a nasty habit of introducing mysteries it has no intention of dealing with, as they are resolved by other tie-ins. Dr. Manhattan appears in one issue to have a conversation which occurs in his own tie-in, and Adrian's narration literally says, "Now is not the moment to recount the conversation." In another issue, Adrian decides to investigate the disappearance of Hooded Justice, only to give up pages later, contributing nothing and leaving the plot thread to be resolved by Darwin Cook's Minutemen. It's almost as though when the writers met to pillage Watchmen's final resting place, all the other writers nabbed the interesting or at least eventful mysteries, leaving Ozymandias with only the story of how Eddie Blake discovers Adrian's plan, a sequence which plays out exactly as described in issue 11 of Watchmen, and yet another example of this book's fundamental reliance upon coincidence as a plot device. That is, the animating event of Watchmen itself, the reason for the comedian's death, reduced entirely down to random chance. The remainder of the book is filled with elaboration on minor, unimportant details, such as the page one issue devotes to Adrian's invention of the nostalgia perfume, which appears throughout the series, and the fragrance's connection to Adrian's deceased lover. The murder of his loyal assistant is also given considerable page real estate, but adds nothing to the story other than an affirmation of a tidbit mentioned in the original. On the other hand, the art here, drawn in Jay Lee's unmistakable hand, is quite naturally impeccable. While I don't believe a story-based comic book should be allowed to sell itself solely on the basis of its art, this book makes a very compelling case at times. While I can accept that Lee's art may not be to everyone's taste, it does have the quality of Renaissance drawing, with its idealization of the human form, which seems an appropriate accoutrement for Adrian Veidt's orderly world and superhuman physique. The use of circular rather than square panels is also a welcome innovation, which of course cannot complement or interact with a non-existent story, but is nonetheless an attractive companion to the complex curvature and high detail of Lee's artwork. In the end, the conditions I described at the start of this video were certainly reason to hope for a good Ozymandias story, but alas, Before Watchmen delivered unto us yet another cynical, empty, and facile comic book, and utter anathema to Watchmen. While made digestible by the strength of its art alone, this shell of a comic book has not earned the right to exist, and could not do so without clinging tightly to the legacy of far superior work. A disappointment through and through, whose only saving grace is managing to not be as turgid as some of its peers.